The all is mind. The universe is mental. This principle embodies the truth that all is mind. It explains that the all, which is the substantial reality underlining all of the outward manifestations and appearances which we know under the terms of the material universe. The phenomena of life, matter, energy, and in short, all that is apparent to our material senses is spirit, which in itself is unknowable and undefinable, but which may be considered and thought of as a universal, infinite, living mind. So how do you understand it's all in the mind? What does that mean to you?
Well, I tend to go straight to the scientific stuff that I've seen talked about in various places. For instance, I mentioned in the previous episode, but the study of quantum physics, you get down into it and you realize that the physical world isn't really physical. It's all space. And it's, atoms and particles and stuff all moving around each other in vast open spaces. And you take that and you combine it with something like the double slit experiment, where they set up and, they shot particles through splits. And if you watched it, it stayed solid. But if you were not watching it, it turned into a wave. And what that told them, is that by the simple act of observing it, we change our world. And if you think about the fact that us and everything in the universe is made up of these particles, and it changes whether or not you're looking at it, and it's not solid and it's all space, all that stuff together plays into the idea of of course it would be mental in some way.
Right.
And, it's so much to me, it would make sense that your mind is snapping all of this reality into place as you observe it, as you exist and you experience the world. And we're all doing that from our each own perspectives, and thus creating this giant web that we exist in at the same time. But it's actually not physical in any way. We're just moving the particles and waves around and everything like that, and it appears that way to us in some broader sense.
Right. And, which we'll get into later, as above, so below, if we study our own thought processes, it can help us get kind of a glimpse into the all. Obviously, it's unknowable, unnameable, all of that, but it's a good exercise for us to understand, okay, mind is power, right? Mm-hmm. Where my attention goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
What I choose to focus on is I'm going to be bringing more of that into my life. So if I think about it's all in the mind, this is, kind of going to be more encouraging to pay attention to your thoughts.
Right.
Right. And what is the true intention of meditation and things like that is sort of being able to bring yourself back into control, to let thoughts pass through you, right? Mm-hmm. To be more permeable, to let it pass through and out, and then to be able to control the thoughts and bring in thoughts that are more desirable.
Right.
So I think about, I've been doing some mantras which were suggested by one of my teachers who is a wonderful Sufi teacher. And I've just been having thoughts of, fear. I've kind of lost my confidence, self-esteem. I've been doing these practices for a week, and I actually feel as if they're working, right? So when I have a fear come up, instead of being like, oh my God, and just focusing on that fear,
right,
I instead evoke this mantra, which is all about divine protection, right? And it connects me to my guardian angel, and I am protected and safe. And then the fear moves through, and then now I'm in this very secure place of safety. Right. And I can move on to the next thing. But that's how powerful the mind is, that if we get too caught up in fear, that becomes this loop, and then we might get trapped there, you know, for a lifetime even. Some people never get out of one thought, that is toxic for them.
I know. It's terrible. It makes me think about the episode of Hoarders, where the people, they get stuck, for decades. Something traumatic happens to them, as these sisters, and their brother died in the late 60s, early 70s. And here we are in the 2020s, and their house is still in shambles, and like they haven't been able to move on. And that was 40 years ago.
Right.
And people just get stuck.
That's so interesting thinking about hoarding, because I follow this feng shui page, and she was just talking today that your house is a reflection of your internal environment. Mm-hmm. And so here they are with all this clutter, all these old thoughts, all these old memories, all these things that are no longer serving them, that need to be buried. Yeah. They need to be transmuted into something else, but instead they're holding on to it. And so the house is a reflection of the mind. And this is why if you're having a lot of, mental disturbances, cleaning, organizing, donating, ridding yourself of these things, and then doing things like sage can actually lift your spirits, right? Because your spirit and your mind are very much interconnected.
Right.
And physically, the house would be the physical example of a cluttered mind.
That's true. And it's so important. There's, as you study all of these, you realize that mentalism has to be number one, because everything originates in the mind. Right. And if you can control your mind, then you have control of all the next 6 of these.
Right.
And no matter what comes up, you can adjust, and you have control. And that's the big thing about you not having your own power, is you don't realize that you have as much mental control. So when you get stuck in those levels of fear or doubt or depression, you don't fully understand how to get yourself out. And so you just get stuck in those lower vibrations. It's much more likely that people are getting stuck in low vibration than high vibration.
Right.
And so I don't know that that's even a thing.
And this, there is a whole principle of vibration that we'll get into more later, but it is, you can choose.
Right. Once you understand mentalism.
Right. What you want to resonate with.
Yeah. Then you have the control. Like it's really, it's the reason it's number one. It's probably the most important.
Right. Well, it makes it hard because I'm trying to focus on mentalism, and I'm over here, I'm having a hard time not bringing up all the other principles, because they all come back it's all in the mind.
It's all in the mind. Yeah. and so as you just have to learn to control your mind. And I think that's probably why it connects in with meditation and these things. It's discipline and quieting your mind and trying to calm it and find those empty spaces, and that helps you gain more control of your mind.
Right.
It's not just cluttered with stuff, as you were saying. You clean it out, and you can sit in an empty space, and you have much more control of that space.
Right. Right. Here's another little quote from the book talking about the principle of mentalism. This principle explains the true nature of energy, power, and matter, and why and how all of these are subordinate to the mastery of the mind. One of the old Hermetic masters wrote long ages ago, "He who grasps the truth of the mental nature of the universe is well advanced on the path of mastery." And these words are as true today as at that time they were first written. Without this master key, mastery is impossible, and the student knocks in vain at the many doors of the temple. If you can't get your mental stuff together, it's going to be a lot harder to grasp any of these spiritual concepts.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Because the mind is sort of the gateway.
Yeah.
And so if your mind's all cluttered and the mind can trap you in a low vibration. It can trap you in a frequency that will actually prevent you from, connecting to that higher self.
And I think that's why it's important to be mindful of, it's funny, be mindful of what you put in your mind.
Right.
What you think about and what you surround your thoughts with and your imagination. It's one of the reasons that I don't watch horror movies anymore, or real violent things or anything like that. It just does not make me, A, it doesn't vibrate with me. It doesn't feel good. But B, I also am somewhat protective of what I put in my mind, and I don't want those dark, ugly thoughts in there.
Right.
you know?
So you've already taken like the initiation, right? Because now you realize how important the mind is. And now you're going to safeguard it.
Right.
And you're going to fill it with things that you choose, things that support the life that you want, and try, to rid it of the other things.
Right.
You can't completely control like what you see. Like you might drive past a terrible wreck scene and it's disturbing, and it might take you a little bit.
Sure.
Some practices and working with, a spiritual teacher or something to help dissolve those thoughts out of your mind, because there are certain traumatic things that are really hard to work through. But we have things like EMDR and all of that will actually help move those bad thoughts to a different place where they're more manageable, where they're not just going to come up like you're just triggered all the time. But yeah, these mental exercises become important, and just sort of, like mental hygiene.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like the more you observe this, the more you step into the power of the mind, you can feel the shifts more. Like it starts very subtly, and you're like, I can feel like this depression. It's trying to take its grip on me, And this is where having some tools and things like that can be a really great support with the mind, because, even like the greatest meditation masters, they're going to have fleeting, crappy thoughts.
Right.
But the key is to allow it to flow through and to not grasp those thoughts. So if someone's like, oh, you're an imposter, or, you aren't worthy of what, yeah, sure. Like, let it flow through you, but don't say, oh, this is who I am now. Right. Because the thoughts are not who we are. Right.
Right.
If you think of the all, it's the all, it's undefinable. Our true essence is beyond what we could even fully comprehend. But while we're here in the physical, we have to be really careful of our thoughts, because they manifest our reality. Luckily in this dimension, it takes a little of time. So if you slip, it's okay, because you can get back on. Where in these higher planes, like some deity has a crappy thought and, now the whole planet just went down. And you see that in some of these myths with these like just very powerful, like when Shiva's upset, I mean, he destroys like an entire, planet. And so
it makes me think of the movie Ghostbusters. At the very end, when they're fighting whatever demon they're fighting, it's all based on the mind. And he'll take the form, or it'll take the form of whatever they think about. And so they have to like, oh, don't think of anything. And all of a sudden, one of them thought about the Jet Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And she's like, it just popped in. I don't know where it came from. And now just from that simple thought, that's what appeared, and that they had to battle. But, it's representing that principle that you talked about, that your thoughts do manifest reality in some way.
Right.